Nice. Okay, so I don't have a lot of slides. I wanted to spend more time doing the demo. This is just what we're going to talk about today: Python API automation. I haven't done as much as Jonas has done. Obviously, I'm just starting playing around with the Mist API, but I've been really enjoying it lately, and I wanted to share a couple of stuff with you guys. So hopefully you can get started on your end. This is just about me. I think I've already talked about myself. Here I put a couple of websites that could be interesting for this presentation, especially the GitHub, where I'm going to be sharing one of the scripts I've done, and you guys can go ahead and use it for yourself. And I started to do some YouTube videos as well, where I go and explain how everything works related to the Mist APIs in a little bit more details than what I'll do today. So if you guys are interested, you can go ahead and check that out. So today, what I want to do today is two demos. The first one will be to showcase how easy it is to just set up one API call within a Python script, right? So we'll do a little bit of code. I've never done a live code demo, so hopefully everything will go well. And then what we'll do is we will create a simple script that will list all the SSID part of a Mist site. Okay, so we'll do that together. And the second demo is one script I've created to automate the process of configuring an AP before an AP on a stick site survey. So that's something that, with other vendors, you usually do it the night before your survey. And if something goes wrong, you end up you can spend, hours trying to make it work. And so I wanted to see if I could automate that process with the Mist API. So now we'll see how long it takes if we can just automate that process. Okay, sounds good. So let's get into the demo time, right? What could go wrong?
The answer is nothing.
Nothing, right? Okay, so can you still see my screen?
We can, yeah.
Okay, so here I'm gonna juggle in between my browser where I'm connected to my Mist dashboard, and then I also have a terminal, right? I'm gonna increase the size a little bit. I have my terminal where I'll be running the script in, and then I have a text editor or code editor, name it as you want, where we'll be writing the code in, okay? So the first script we want to do is actually, create a simple API call to list all the SSIDs part of a Mist site. So here I have my dashboard. If I go to my organization here, under site configuration, I only have one site. It's a primary site. And within that specific site, if I go to network WLANs, you can see that I have a whole bunch of SSIDs that I've created, right? So it's essentially the script will do, the script will just list those SSIDs, right? So let's see how we can do this using APIs. The first thing you want to do is you want to go to the API documentation. So to get to the API documentation from the dashboard, what I do is I go to the help icon. You click on the help icon, and then you get access to the API documentation, right? You can see it's a very fancy website, but you have a lot of good information in here. For the call we want to make and list all the WLANs, we have to go under the WLAN section here. And then here we will get all the information we need to make the API call. One important piece of information is the URL that we'll need to send to retrieve those sites. And here you can see that we're going to have to include that into our URL. And Mist shows you an example of the data you will get back from the Mist cloud when you're asking the cloud to send you that list of specific SSIDs. So it's sending you all the WLAN profiles, and then it's sending you a pair of key and value that would detail anything regarding that WLAN profile, right? So we can see the SSID and so on. We have a whole bunch of other information as well. So now if we want to create a script, a Python script, and make that API call, what do we need? So I need to create a file. So I have my demo one here. I'm going to new file, and I'm going to call it a new Python script, I guess. I'm going to call it listwlans.py. And in order to make this work, we'll need to import two libraries. The first one is called requests, and that's the library we will need to actually make the API call. And the second one we'll need is the JSON library, and we will need this library to understand the data that the Mist cloud is sending us back, okay? Then in order to make our API call, we need to build our API URL, right? And in this specific case, we need to send a GET request because we're pretty much just asking the cloud to send us some information. So we're not doing any changes or anything like that. So we just need to send a GET request. And then to specify, and then the URL that we actually need, if I go back to my Mist documentation, is actually this guy here. So I can copy and paste this one. And before that, I need to put the address of the api.mist.com, right? So that's the URL I would need to send if I want to retrieve the list of WLANs, okay? So what I do here usually is I define one variable for that specific URL. So I can go back and copy paste this guy here. And here, as you can see, we're gonna have to specify the site ID, right? And if you want to find out what your site ID is, you can go back to the Mist dashboard. And usually I go back to the network and WLAN list. Make sure you have the site selected here. And then in the URL here at the top, anything that's after the last slash will be your site ID. So I can copy this guy and I can paste it here. And now I have my URL. Second piece of content I need will be the header. So along with the URL, you have to send a little bit more information. And in this case, when we're dealing with Mist APIs, we have to specify two types of information. The first one would be the content type. So this is the type of data you're expecting to get back or you're expecting to send alongside your API call. And in this case with Mist, we're using JSON. So this is going to be application/JSON. And we also have to define the authorization method we use in this case to authorize ourselves to send that API call to the Mist cloud. And in this case, we use a token. And so I'm just gonna specify a token variable at the top here. I'm not explaining the Python code, but if you watch the YouTube videos I've made, I actually go and explain the Python code. But so here, what I'm doing is later on, I will go and get a token. Token is a private information, right? And this token allows you to actually send API calls to the Mist cloud, right? And this is what we'll send along our URL to pretty much make everything happen. Then I need to make my call, right? And to make the call, we're going to use the requests module, and we're going to use the get function within that request module. And what do we need to pass as an argument? Well, we need to pass the URL and the headers that we've just defined. Okay, so here, this will actually send the call, right? And then what we need to do is we need to put in a variable all of the data we get back from the Mist cloud. So here I'm just going to define a variable I'll call get response, and then in that variable I will get all the response, all the data that the Mist cloud will send back to me, and part of that data will be hopefully the list of WLANs. Okay. And then here, what I can do at this point is I can understand. I'll try to get access to that data. One thing I like to do is check if everything went well, and you can do that using this get response.status code. It's going to give you the status code of that specific API call. Mist is using a RESTful API, which is based on HTTP, HTTPS. So you'll see that the codes are, HTTP codes. So 200 means everything was good, everything went well. So if everything went well, here we'll be able to actually, get access to all of the data. And then else, I'm just going to create the else right now. And if something went wrong, I can, print some message. I can say something went wrong, and then I can display the error message. I can display the status code, so we can investigate what went wrong. Okay, so assuming everything went well, and I hope everything went well, will go well in this demo, hopefully. What we can do is we can actually retrieve the data, the JSON data that Mist is sending us back, and that JSON data is actually into a variable called response. .text, right? And then what I can do here is I can convert that JSON data into a Python dictionary, so it's easier for us to handle the data within our Python script. And to do that, I'm just going to define a new variable. I'm going to call it wlans, and then I can do JSON. I'm going to use the JSON module that I've just imported at the top, and then I'm going to load. I'm going to use the loads function, and here I'm going to put the get response .text. Okay, and so this will convert the JSON that I'm receiving back from the Mist cloud into a Python dictionary, and then here from there I can do a loop. So I can do for wlan in wlan. So I'm going to loop on all of my SSIDs, and here I can print the name. So I could print. I'm actually going to print the ID as well. So I can do wlan, and then I can go and retrieve the value corresponding to the ID key, and then I can print the SSID. Same way here, I'm going to retrieve the data corresponding to the SSID key, and then just for fun, we'll do the band, right? So this will tell me on which band that SSID is defined on, right? And then hopefully this will do it, right? So this is all the code you need to send one API call. In our case, it's a get. So we're getting information from the Mist dashboard. And here, the last piece I need to do is actually go and get my token. Okay, so token is private information. So I'm just going to copy paste it here out of sight. Right, and then I can just save my script. And so here, if I go back to, can you guys hear me still? Are you still following me?
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Okay.
And we are following you. This is really good stuff.
Awesome.
It's almost
okay.
like Ryan's and Jake's course in 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be that pretentious. But anyway, so here, if I go to my directory, my demo one, I have my Python script here, and now I can run it, right? On my computer, I use the Python 8, and so here I could just do Python 8 and then launch a script, and here it's not going to work, right? So here it's not going to work because we need to install the request module, right? I haven't installed it on my system, and so here I could totally install the request module on my system, and I'll be able to use it. But what I actually like to do when I work on different Python scripts is I like to create a virtual environment, which is pretty much going to create an environment in which I'm going to be able to install whichever modules I need for that specific project. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much in details on how that works, but I will use the Python version that I want to use, and then I can do -m virtual environment, and then I can call it Mist demo, the name it just yours to choose. And then once you have this virtual environment created using Python, whichever version you need, here I can activate that virtual environment. So I do source Mist demo bin activate, and here you see on the left, I'm into that specific virtual environment. And if I look at which version of Python I'm using whichever version I specified here while creating my virtual environment. So in here, it's a brand new virtual environment. So obviously I don't have the request module yet, so I can go ahead and install it. So I can just use the pip install requests command, and this will install the request module. And from there, I should be ready to test our script. So I can just do Python list wlan.py, and it worked. I'm very happy it worked. Okay, so this is the list of all the SSIDs we had in the dashboard, and as you can see, I'm getting the ID, the name, and the band, right? All of this in one API call. I could get more data out of these SSIDs if I go to the API call, and if I look at all the different keys that I have access to, I could find out if the SSID is enabled, what type of authentication, you name it. The goal of this little demo was just to show you that it doesn't take a lot of line of codes to actually create an API within Python and integrate it within your script. Okay. How was that? Good.
Sweet.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you went quickly, but you were explaining really well along the way. Plus, you got it to work.
Yeah, I'm happy it worked. Yeah, I know. I went quickly. So if you have no Python experience, maybe that was just gibberish to you. But hopefully, if you have a little bit of programming experience, hopefully this made sense, and maybe can inspire you to try it on your end.
Absolutely, and we are all nerds here. And do you have any like further reading? I know if you go to conferences like Wireless LAN Professionals Conference, they usually have this 3-day Python boot camp actually on their selection, for example, which is hosted by MIST employees actually, Ryan Azima and Jake Snyder. So that's a really good place to start during the conferences. And of course, what are your favorite places online, Francois, for example? Where did you learn? How did you learn to do all this?
So I learned actually when I went to WPC a couple years back, I attended that specific boot camp, and then I got a book from Jake and Ryan, and it was Learn Python the Hard Way. And they would give you a couple of scripts. Yeah, this guy exactly. Yeah. So I used that book, and then I have when I went to university. Yeah, I don't know this one, but the Learn the Hard Way is the one I used. And when I went to university, I actually did a lot of programming back then. I did a lot of we started with like assembly code, and then we did C, C++, Java, you name it. So I knew what a variable was, the integer, and all of that. So I wasn't starting from scratch. I just needed to learn about the syntax and get back into the coding mode, because I actually studied networking because I didn't like coding too much, right? But now that I can see that I can apply code to something that I like, Wi-Fi, it's very exciting, and I guess I can use those skills that I've gathered at studying at the university. So yeah, so I wasn't starting from scratch, but I used the book to get used with the syntax, and then I did a lot of YouTube. Like I learned from YouTube, right? So I watch a video and try to see how they do things. One thing that I did, if you ask me, I guess I can show you what I've done is if you go on YouTube, on my channel, SemFio Networks, actually it came up with a couple of videos to explain how I do my stuff. So I did one where you can set up your first API call, and this is more using Postman, which is not coding, it's more an application that helps you to get familiar with APIs, and then one within a Python script, and then how to set up your virtual environment. Kind of like what I did really quickly. I explained it here in 15 minutes. So if you want to get more data, you can watch these. They'll help you out. And then MIST has a good class on API, right? Is it class.mist.com? I think that's a
api-class.mist.com, I think.
Okay, so this API that's class.mist.com. This is I didn't know about this guy. I just learned about it yesterday watching the bootcamp, but I've taken a look at it and it's really good. So
good stuff,
yeah.
Good stuff. And then
Anyway, let me get into.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do I have time for my second demo?
How long
involves.
does it take?
Let's find out. No, 5 minutes.
Sounds good to me. Let's find out.
Okay, so I have a MIST API here connected to my internet, right? So it's just a MIST API. I've taken it outside of the box. It hasn't been claimed to anything yet, right? And I want to configure it to do my API on the stick site survey, right? So I've actually, I'm going to go to demo 2. I've actually created a script for that. So right now I have nothing, but I can go ahead and retrieve the one I have on my GitHub. And the way you do this, if you're curious, you go here to download, you copy that URL, and then you can go back here and you can say git clone, and then you paste that URL. And now I have everything here. So I can, I'm going to go a little fast here, but I can navigate into the directory where I have my setup API script. And all I have to do here is configure, actually give the script a couple of configurations. And so here I can actually go back to my, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go back to this. Tell me if you can see the editor.
We can, yeah. So when you configure a missed AP to an AP on a stick survey mode,
Yeah.
what do you do for the AP?
Yeah.
What are you going to show the configuration for that? Perfect.
Yeah. So what I do within the script is I create a site, right? And so if I go back to the missed dashboard, it will be under organization site. And the reason why I created a site is because in order to have the configuration, stick to the AP itself and work without the access to the internet, you have to specify a settings under the site, which is all the way at the bottom here, called AP config persistence. So that's going to be very important for AP on the stick because the AP will not be connected to the internet when you do your survey. So you want to make sure that this option is enabled, and that's why I just created a site that has this this feature enabled right away automatically. And then after that, within that site, I will go ahead and create two SSID, one for 2.4, one for 5 gigahertz. That's just how I like to do things. And then I will claim the AP if the AP has not been claimed to the organization, so I can actually see it into the inventory here. And then I will assign that AP to the site that I've just created. And then when you do that, the AP will retrieve the configuration, start broadcasting the SSID. And the last thing I do is configure the radios. So configure the channel and the transmit power. Make sense?
Perfect.
So all of that within the same script, right? And so if I look at my config file, I have to configure all of that data, right? So the first section here is anything related to the API. And I will need to gather to get my org ID. So to get the org ID, if I go back to the dashboard, it's very simple. It's in the URL here. It says org ID. So I'm just going to copy and paste it here. And you're going to have to do the same on your end if you want to use this token. I'm going to go and put the token later on. Then for the site here, I've just defined the name of the site location. What's important is the country code because it will change how the radio will get configured to make sure you don't go over your regulations. And then I configure my 2.4 information, name of the SSID channel. Let's change it to channel 1. Power, we're gonna make it, let's say 10. 5 gigahertz, same thing here. I'm gonna use, let's say 36. And I'll use a transmit power of 14 is good. Okay, and then I need to give the details about the AP. So I need to give the MAC address of the AP. And if you don't have that information, you can just look at the back of the AP and you should have the information. So I'm just going to copy paste what I have here. And then you have to put the claim code. If the AP hasn't been claimed to your organization, you have to put the claim code. Okay, the claim code and the token ID are private informations. So once again, I'll go and ahead and do that off screen. I'm just right now I'm copy pasting the claim code to the config file, and the claim code, once again, it's on a sticker at the back of the AP, and then the token ID, I'm just copy pasting it, and then I'm pasting it to my config file, right? And then we're gonna pray the demo gods that everything will go well. I'm gonna hide this and I'll show you what I have. Okay, so if I go back here, this is what I have. I've actually hidden the API, but this is anything I need to make my API calls, my site config, my 2SSID, my radio configs, and then I've saved this file. So now I can go back to my terminal, right? And here I should be able to launch a script. So now for this script, you will also need the request module, but because I'm already inside my virtual environment, I should already have it in there. So now I can just, execute the script. And now I forget the name of it, setup. Okay, so Python setup AP on a stick, and then I have to put as an argument here, I'll put my config file. Okay, and so here I have my AP next to me connected to the internet, and then I run this, and it's gonna, hopefully everything will go well. So here it's created the AP on the stick site, it created the 2.4 SSID, created a 5 gig SSID, it claimed the AP to the organization, it assigned the AP to the site, and it configured the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio, right? And it took 6.6 seconds, okay? And that's it. Now you can unplug the AP, go on site, connect it to PoE battery, and it should be broadcasting those two SSID. If I go back, circle back, and go back to my MIS dashboard, and if I go to site configuration, now I have my AP on the stick, new site. at the bottom, I can see that the AP config persistence is enabled. If I go to network WLANs and I select here I actually have to refresh the thing, and I select the AP on a stick site, I can see I have my 2.45 gigahertz SSID. Here, I'm not doing anything fancy with authentication here, because what I care about when I do AP on the stick is just the beacon that's sent by the AP. So I actually don't care if no authentication is configured here. And then if I go to the access point, under that site, I see my access point. So here it's disconnected. It takes a little while for the AP to get configured. As you can see, just refreshed here. I can see my channel, my transmit power on both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. If you don't have access to this information on your dashboard, you can click on the settings here and you can select whatever you want, and you can reorganize, the different columns. Very useful feature. So here, if I refresh, I'm pretty much sure it's going to be connected. Now it's connected. I have the name of the AP that I've defined in my config. I have the channel transmit power I have configured in my config, and everything is ready to go. If I do Wi-Fi Explorer and I try to see, if I filter on survey, now I can see, I can see my 2 SSIDs, so I'm pretty much ready to go.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Questions?
And with that, questions for anyone in the audience? That was fantastic, Frank. So I don't know how you were able to cram like quick stuff yet understandable stuff in there so much, but this was fantastic. And combining all of these presentations today, it's like real world meets presentation. So it's been really good.
I was going to say, like, in the real world, sometimes you may want to change those settings, right? So all you have to do really is go back to your config and change it. So let's say we're going to go on 11 and maybe 8 dBm. This is in dBm, and maybe we want to use 44 with the 40 megahertz wide channels. Maybe we want to change that to 9. I'm just using arbitrary stuff. I can save that config file, and then I can rerun the script. And then here the script will check if the sites already exist and all. It will not recreate it. It will just reuse whatever exists, and it will only change the radio settings here. So yeah.
Here's a question for you, for all of you. Shouldn't actually a missed AP taken out of the box, shouldn't it run a firmware that would do an APoS setup by default, that you could probably then control with the missed app? So you could control the transmit power and channels and things like that for the AP directly from there, but it should come pre-configured for APoS operation. Let's say like really quick beaconing and of course broadcasting SSID stuff like that. Some good default transmit powers for both, and then you could adjust those using the app. How much? Because I mean, you shouldn't need to have a script like this ideally. That's a missed problem that we should solve by shipping an AP out of the box with an access point on a stick configuration.
Maybe you would have to have like I guess an organization that you dedicate for that, or not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how that would work.
I mean, do you though? I mean, if it was running in a specific APoS mode, so it didn't need anything in the cloud, it would just beacon with specific settings, that kind of stuff.
I see what you mean. Yeah, you could totally do it. Yeah, it depends. I guess it depends on your customer and the use case. Like what's the first use case for the AP when it's out of the box? Is it to do an AP on a stick site survey, or is it to install on site? I guess that's going to matter as well.
Yeah, but I mean, once you connect anything to the AP, it should fall back, get out of the APoS mode, and continue its life some other way. But if you just power it up, for example, or something like that, then it would do APoS.
So there's other APs are doing that, and honestly, the first thing we do, we put them in that profile, which turn off all the radios, because we don't want to. If you go into do staging in the customer site and you have 100 access points connected to switches, you don't want them to connect right away to the controller and start broadcasting USSID and do the channel planning. So actually, I'm on the side who preferring don't do that. And I mean, for this use case, you can just come and configure the access point.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
Just to not to allow these access points start broadcasting a default SSID when you just plug them into a PoE switch.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm buying that argument totally.